Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very privileged to introduce our guest speaker today. He's come from afar to talk about his delightful new book, which is Singing and Dancing is the Voice of the Law. It's from the Song of Zazen by Hakuin. Hakuin was a kind of a tough Rinzai Zen master in Japan, but as I said in my intro, I have the privilege of writing the intro to the book. As I said, even though he's considered to be a tough Zen master, he has a heart mind as soft as a baby and as fresh as a spring dandelion. And Busho does just a wonderful job of bringing that out and showing how Hakuin's teaching, even though he's in Rinzai, is applicable to us right now. And one of the things Busho does is he brings in people like Lady Gaga and Duran Duran and trauma. Everybody, so many people are dealing with trauma these days, and so many people love Lady Gaga, even me, even Olga. So he makes everything relevant. So anyway, I'm proud of him and happy to be his friend and former teacher.
Forever teacher. Thank you, Tim. How many of us have a copy in their laps or near them? Close enough.
One in the book.
There is one in the book on page XXIII. Thank you, Lisa. We're going to start by doing together what I did by myself mostly for quite a long time. I chanted this poem as part of my kind of chant cycle, as part of my zazen for quite a long time, and that's kind of how I came to know it. And for those of you who are newer, chanting practice is central to Buddhist practice in general, but Zen as well. We do a lot of chanting in this tradition. There's a whole talk one could give about that, but for today's purposes, it's just a way of getting closer, much closer to a verse, to a scripture. It's your voice now saying it. It's coming out of lungs that have warmed the air into what we call your breath. So we can't pretend that these words belong to anybody else now. They belong to you, right? You chant something, it comes out of your mouth, it's yours now. So it doesn't belong to another person, it doesn't belong to another culture, it doesn't belong to another tradition. No, this is you. So chanting is kind of intimacy practice. And it's certainly part of how we come to hear wise words in our body, feel them resonate, and we come to understand them in a different way than if we just... Does that make sense, kind of? If that's a little woo-woo, that's cool. But we're going to chant this together, so you can look on with your neighbor, or you can just, if you don't have one in front of you can just close your eyes and listen. We'll chant this the way we do most things here at Zen Center, so most of you know how we'll do this, and you can just follow along if you're newer to practice. So this is the Song of Zazen. All beings by nature are Buddha, as ice by nature is water. Apart from water there is no ice. Apart from beings no Buddha. How sad that people ignore the near and search for truth afar. Like someone in the midst of water, crying out in thirst. Like a child of a wealthy home, wandering among the poor. Lost on dark paths of ignorance, we wander through the 6 worlds. the highest praise. Devotion, repentance, training, the many paramitas, all have their source in Zazen. Those who try Zazen even once wipe away beginningless crimes. Where are all the dark paths then? The pure land itself is near. Those who hear this truth even once and listen with a grateful heart, treasuring it, revering it, gain blessings without end. Much more those who turn about, bear witness to self-nature that is no nature, go far beyond mere doctrine. Here effect and cause are the same, the way is neither two nor three, with form that is no form, growing and coming, we are never astray, with thought that is no thought, singing and dancing are the voice of the law, boundless and free is the sky of samadhi, bright the full moon of wisdom. Truly is anything missing now? Nirvana is right here before our eyes. This very place is the lotus land. This very body, the Buddha. Thank you. That was a gift to me. I've never been in a room full of people chanting that before. I'm so tempted to just say, we're done. You got what you need. It's all right there. Thank you for that. I'll read something. I'm supposed to do this. I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. We're supposed to at least read something from the book. So I'll do that. And then we're going to talk about the Song of Zazen. This is the very beginning. And strangely, I have very little memory of the order in which a lot of this stuff came, because writing is a long process and all that kind of stuff. But I remember this was actually one of the first things, some version of this is one of the first things I wrote. It was a really important memory for me. And so I wanted to write it down, and it ended up being, the editor thought this should be the beginning of the book. It's right after Tim's introduction. By March 2008, I had heard my Zen teacher, Tim Burkett, give many Dharma talks, probably dozens at that point, because I had known him for some years by then. But that particular talk shot through me like an arrow, completely unexpected, searing, transformative, and inexplicable. I'm not sure why my heart was so blessedly available that morning, but as he spoke, the hair on the back of my neck raised, an almost fear response to his volume and passion and message. I became suddenly and acutely aware that I was in public. I wanted to run and I wanted to cry, but I felt I could do neither. The urge to run and the urge to cry are two very common responses to hearing something true. And I had both at once. Tim was talking about a painting, 6 Persimmons by Mu Chi, as a Zen Buddhist expression, significant because of its ordinariness. No ethereal realms, no lofty gods and goddesses, no heavens or hells, just this ordinary fruit, this ordinary moment, this ordinary life. He had a printed copy of the painting with him that he held up as a visual aid. Tim then talked about how quickly something becomes a convention, how quickly we kill something by copying, analyzing, imitating, and judging. And the spontaneity of life is killed. When that happens, he said, tear it up. He held his copy of Mucci's painting out at arm's length and tore it in half. Remember doing this?
I remember when I read it.
He was in a mood that day. It was fabulous. The sound of paper being ripped flew into me like a flock of restless crows bent on rearranging all of my internal furniture. It is hard to say why this particular teaching, a version of which I had heard countless times before, ripped me open so profoundly that day. But right then, that wasn't the point. The point was that I was in a Zen center and something felt deeply right about what I was experiencing. I was on the right track. I had no idea the size of the project then. In fact, I still don't. But I can tell you that the crazy love crows hidden in that piece of paper weren't planning anything for me as tame as rearranging my furniture. If your spiritual life doesn't have at least a little vein of fear running through it, an awe in the face of the size of all of this, then you need to look a little deeper. The goal of any real spiritual practice is not to rearrange your internal furniture to achieve better traffic flow. It is to tear your house down completely so that there is nothing between you and love. From the ego's point of view, practice is the least safe thing there is. Good. That's the point. Love isn't about safe. Love is about love. So, it's fun to talk about this memory here. I remember that. You know, the Zendo used to be over there. I remember where I was sitting. I remember the lint on my socks. You know, it was one of those moments that just, you know. What I remember was it was the annual Sangha meeting. And so the talk has to be really short, like 15 minutes, whoever is scheduled that day. Just make it quick because we got to shift gears, turn the floor over to Kimberly. We got a budget to talk about. We got plans. We got, you know, board members to elect. If you've never been to a board meeting, that's how we do it. Short talk. So for whatever reason on that day, I was in the right place to hear what I was offered. What's the connection between that and Song of Zazen? I don't know. But I came by this poem in the basement, in the old, I keep wanting to say the old building. It isn't the old building, it's this building, but you know, the old manifestation of this building. Helping clean out once on a work practice day and going through a box of old stuff labeled, I think, Doan. And there were a bunch of really old, they're probably still down there, really old binders with, you know, 3-hole punch stuff in there, old versions of the service and old chants and just old versions of meal chants and that kind of stuff. Anyway, in the pocket was this piece of paper called the Song of Zazen, and it had this poem on it. I went, oh, that's a new one. I've never heard that. It's not part of our, like Tim said, it's a Rinzai Zen thing, not a Soto Zen thing. So it's not part of our regular routine, not part of our chants, not part of our liturgy. But I went, oh, that looks like an interesting thing. And it's by Hakun. I'd at least heard of him. He's a seminal figure in Japanese Zen, you know, so he influences all of us. He's just a hugely important figure. So I made a Xerox. I just made a copy of it and took it home with me. Forgot about it for years. Found it again. Went, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll chant with that for a while. So one more plug here for chanting practice. If that's not part of your daily practice, maybe consider including it. If you're caught by something, passage from a book, a poem, a letter from your grandma, I don't know, just something you want to feel more deeply, something you want to have more of a cellular relationship with, just chant it every day for a week or something and just see if something happens for you. I think it's a profound practice. So I thought, all right, I'll get to know this weird thing, and if I don't dig it after a while, I'll put it away. That's cool. But I want to give Hakuin a chance. And so then it started working on me from the inside out. From the outside in, because the words made sense. It isn't so cryptic that I didn't have an intellectual foothold. But it started kind of working on me from the inside out. And a relationship developed. And what Tim said made sense. His rep on the street, Hakuin, his rep on the street is, he's a crank. He's cranky, and he's firm, and he's strict, and he's rigid, and yeah, he's a big reformer in Japanese Zen, but it was all about, straighten up, you guys, I'm sick of your slouching, metaphorically, or perhaps literally, we're gonna do this thing now. Okay, yeah. But then there's these other stories. There's these other stories that kind of give you a glimpse like, oh, I bet that was just a thing. There's just a little bit of stage production there. Because there's also stories, and maybe they're apocryphal, we don't know. He's the one who fosters the baby that no one would claim for months before the mom comes back and says, it was actually mine. But he was the one who was willing to say, sure, I'll take the shame for the unborn baby and for your relationship with your family. Google the story, it's very, very sweet. There's perhaps apocryphal stories about him, staring down the blade of the samurai's sword. Teach me about heaven and hell. I would never teach you, you ignorant piece of blah, blah, blah. Ah, there's hell. Ooh, that's pretty gutsy. Oh, I get it. You're giving me a teaching. Put my sword away. There's heaven. There's your teaching. You're done. Wow. You can feel the tenderness underneath that, right? It's kind of a big bluster, but. So he started speaking to me. And so here's what we're going to talk about today, because I have limited time, and that's fine. We're not here to explore this. We're not here to explore this poem today in great detail. I don't explore it in great detail in the book. I just offer you a couple hundred pages of thoughts. But the poem, as I said, belongs to you. So if anything happens today other than you having a relationship with this poem, or you just being even curious about the possibility of having a relationship with this poem, that's gravy. That's really the whole point. It's just to open one more Dharma door, right? And that's what he's offering us here. So to me, this poem is about the power of faith in the unshakable and fundamental goodness of life itself. To me, that's the whole poem. I'll say it again. Sounds like a Hallmark card. But I don't think it is. To me, this poem is an expression of the power of faith in the unshakable and fundamental goodness of life itself, which we call Buddha in this tradition. Awakened consciousness, compassionate consciousness, wise consciousness, consciousness that wants to connect, consciousness that wants to be intimate, consciousness that wants to connect to you because it's curious, because you're included, because you are it, right? The way one part of your body cares for another when it's injured is Buddha nature, the part of you that feels for someone else, even though your head believes that they're not you. There's something fundamental, evolutionary, we could say. They didn't have that word in 500 BC, so they just said, oh, someone woke up. But can you kind of feel the energy there? We begin to identify with life and realize that life's nature is to connect, and its nature is non-separate, and so that gives rise to stuff like compassion and clarity and wisdom. And that's what this poem is really about. And so he starts by saying those first 4 lines that all of us just chanted together. All beings by nature are Buddha. The whole rest of the poem is just that same statement in different ways. But that's it, that's the whole thing. It really is, that's the entire thing. All beings by nature are Buddha, 6 words. And then he starts using metaphor because that's his job. He's a poet, he's a Zen teacher, he's a spiritual teacher, we gotta use metaphor. As ice by nature is water. Apart from water, there is no ice. Apart from beings, no Buddha.
Yeah.
There's our metaphor. It's easy for us because it's a simple metaphor, right? To understand, oh, I get it, ice is just water. They're not two. They are, but they're not. Can you feel it? They're different, but they aren't. One of the hardest parts of this whole project for me was planning it such that the release date would happen, and this talking event that you're at right now would happen in the middle of the winter, where there's lots of ice all around the building, so that all of you could feel viscerally the metaphor, right? I worked backwards from there. Oh, ice, that's the thing I slipped on the way today. Oh dear. I hope I'm not alone in feeling like that's still a radical assertion about the nature of life, that all beings' inherent nature is awakening nature. I've heard that teaching 1,000 times, probably literally 1,000 times, because I've been hanging out at Zen centers for a long time. That's the party line. We've heard that a lot. We're not the only tradition that asserts things. Other traditions use different words to assert the same thing. But every time I hear it, I can feel the parts of me that resist it. And I can also feel the parts of me that go, oh, I hope that's true. Dare I? And then I feel the other parts of me that are like, yeah, of course. What else would they possibly be? Like, what else do you think this is but a dance, right? I hope that makes sense when I talk about different parts of me responding to that line in different ways. All beings by nature are Buddha. Part of me knows that because part of you knows that. Part of all of us knows that. We know that, right? And can you feel the other part of you that goes, well, except, and certainly not, and for sure not. I'll give you a list. I'll give you a list of people that are not included in that proposition, list of organizations. Actually, it's going to be quite a long list. Do you mind if I get back to you in like a week? Wow. But isn't that interesting? We start to feel our own resonance with, ooh, I like it. Whoa. I'm moving toward, I'm moving away from. I believe you, but I don't. So what this poem is about is putting those two parts of yourself in relationship with each other. You're not getting this teaching from Hakuin. You're not getting this teaching from Zen. Why would you imagine that's outside of you? Part of you already knows this. You can feel it, especially when you chant it. All beings by nature are Buddha. Yes, there's part of me that knows that to be true. Beyond its expression even. I know that in my DNA to be true. And then another part of us goes, good. Put those two things in relationship with each other. Now the entire thing is internal. The part of you that knows can be in relationship with the part of you that doubts or isn't sure. The part of you that's kind can be in relationship with the part of you that's scared and gets mean, right? The part of you that's wise can be in relationship with the part of you that gets confused and can't see clearly. Can you feel that the teaching is the same, but it's internal, it's internal, it's internal. You don't have to go out to get it. It's like, oh, if only I'd known Hakuin, I would have gotten this teaching. Oh man, I was born a couple of 100 years too late. Oh, what a bummer. Missed him. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. It's yours. It's yours. It's you. Always has been you. He just wrote it in his way. But do you feel how that can become internal? And so then the next time when you notice, there's my frustration, there's my pain, there's my anger, there's my doubt, there's my violence, there's my hate, there's my sadness, you go, oh, I know what this is. This is ice. And there's part of me that understands that that's just water. I will put that part of me that's kind and understands and patient and is curious, I'll put that in relationship with the part of me that needs it now, that's all. Right? Does that make sense? A little bit? It's okay if it doesn't. I've had this idea in me long enough that this is starting to make actual sense to me. Is that scary? I don't know. Be careful, you are at a Zen center. All right, so stuff that when a few laughs from the back, a few stuff you hear the first time you come to a Zen center, go, wow, that'll never make sense to me. Be warned. Be warned. If you hang out long enough, you're like, oh yeah, I actually get it. I get how things can have two natures at once. So it's a radical assertion. This whole beautiful song is a radical assertion about your true nature. I'm going to have to skip because, oh, there's so much to say about this beautiful little piece. I'll read this. How come the beginnings of books have Roman numerals as page numbers and then the rest have normal? What is that? Does anybody know what that is about? All books do that though, right? That's weird. I wonder how that started.
I always think it's like negative numbers. Like the first page is page number 1. So then you have
Like negative, that's how it should be. It should start at -15 and then -14, -13, and work its way down.
But it's the Roman numerals.
It's the, yeah.
So I don't know if it's some ancient academic.
It's probably academic.
Maybe it's the parts you can skip.
So Tim's introduction is in Roman numerals. So don't you dare. I like the way your brain works. Okay. Oh dear. Page 22 in Roman numerals, evidently. When we go far outside on a clear night, away from light pollution, we can stare up into the depths of the night sky. We are gazing at infinity. Even if we gaze at that infinity through a cardboard toilet paper tube, although our field of vision is significantly smaller, we still see infinity. It's no less infinite than the unobstructed view, because even a tiny fraction of infinity is still infinite. Your toilet paper tube view is limited. Your toilet paper tube view also still beholds the ultimate sky. There is only one sky, and your limited view still sees it. The one moon shows in every pool, and in every pool the one moon. A lot of you know that. That's Dogen, right? There's therefore only one seeing. It is yours, and it is not yours, because it is not limited to you. So the view you have from your cushion is not yours. It is the only view, it is all view, and so it also belongs to all beings. Considering the scope and the depth of what I am trying to write about with this book, the best I can hope for is a toilet paper tube vision. But that's okay. I will do my best. A fraction is only a fraction, but it's also the whole. Speaking on behalf of others is always dangerous, and I try not to do it. I even hesitate to speak on my own behalf. But I will do just that with this offering, in the hopes that something here can catalyze a helpful connection being made in your heart about suffering, Zen, or life. That is my hope. I hope this book helps to entice you to explore and practice this beautiful, elegant, humble, and deeply wise tradition for yourself. Or don't. Either decision is fine. Either is complete. My hope is that you feel some of the fire that was in Hakuin's heart as your own. Trace the tongue of invisible flame down through the ages. Claim it as your own because it is. It can't belong to anyone else. I appreciate how, what's the word I'm looking for here? How participatory art is. You know, the poem on the page without a reader, right? The sculpture without someone looking at it, the song without someone hearing it. It's just so inherently participatory. There's no Zazen apart from your Zazen. It's so inherently participatory. Zen doesn't happen unless you sit, unless you wonder, where's my breath right now? Compassion doesn't happen in this world unless you go, oh, there's part of me that's hurting and scared right now. And I want to introduce that part of me to the part that's patient and curious and kind. There, That's the activity of Buddha. It just happened. The miracle happened again. It can't happen without you. There isn't practice that isn't yours. In the most literal possible sense, that is a true thing. How sad that people ignore the near and search for truth afar, like someone in the midst of water crying out in thirst. Do you feel how that's about the projection? It's right here. It's always been right here. Those are some of my favorite lines. I can feel that so viscerally, how often I am that person. Right in the middle of everything. Starving at the banquet, right? Scriptural teachings and poets have been giving us variations on this same idea forever, both in and out of the Buddhist tradition. It's right there. You are it. How often we need to be reminded. It didn't occur to me until after this book was published. Oh, like someone in the midst of water. There he's using the water metaphor again. Ah, doggone it. I should have mentioned that in the book. It's probably too late now. Isn't that cool though? Like the last thing I wrote was written a couple of years ago, but the relationship still continues. Every time I read this, I go, oh, maybe that's what. Oh, now I see another layer. Do you have that in your own life? With some reading, some scriptures, how many times have you chanted the Heart Sutra and then you go, oh, holy cow, I wonder if that's what. Right? That person that you love, that you know so well, and they say something, you go, what, that's inside of you? Wow! I thought I knew you. Here's another new dimension. Then they say, I've said that like 50 times this week. Oh, but I finally heard it. Where do we want to end up here today? His rebellious streak, the rebellious streak of Zen, is always a popular thing to talk about. It is for me anyway. As a lot of you know, Zen most certainly is Buddhism. It's sometimes been described as a response to Buddhism. I don't know how fair that is, but I also kind of get it. And Hakuin certainly offers a few things that we might look at twice if we had only been exposed to the traditional expressions of this tradition. Bearing witness to self-nature that is no nature. Can you feel the immediate clarification? Oh, you're self-nature. Oh, and by the way, that's no nature. That's Zen. Geez, that's Zen, isn't it? With form that is no form. Just making sure you don't forget about emptiness. Make sure you don't forget about emptiness. Make sure you don't feel... We're just shooting that in there all the time. Tim is smiling because he's like, yeah, that's just our thing, right? Followed by, or actually preceded by, self-nature that is no nature, go far beyond mere doctrine. This is a doctrine guy. Hakuin is a doctrine guy. He is a reformer. He's a radical reformer. But he's absolutely here's the thing, this is the deal, follow the rules, sit up straight. He's a doctrine guy. So putting lines like that in are his invitation. When Zen says, please use Zen to get beyond Zen. Don't ever stop at Zen. Please use Buddha to go beyond Buddha, as Dogen says. Please don't stop at that. He's including in something that in some schools of Zen is doctrine, the line go beyond doctrine. That took me right back to Tim taking the painting and tearing it in half. Look at this beautiful painting. Do you see how perfect its expression is? Do you see how important this was as a stage of development? Do you see why this piece of art had to happen and be called Buddhist art, even though there's no Buddhism in the whole thing? Wow, isn't that perfect? Do you see it? Great. Now you get it, you're done. Whoosh. Otherwise, you're hanging on to it and you just turned it into the thing. Gotcha. Do you feel how that's, oh, he just went beyond Buddha. No wonder I was so freaked out. No wonder I was so, plus he was mic'd up and was right in front of the microphone. The whoosh sound, oh. The speakers in the corner of the room, it felt like it was coming from the heavens. Oh my goodness. Coming and going, we are never astray. With thought that is no thought, singing and dancing are the voice of the law. So that line is beautiful to me. I find that line absolutely beautiful. And I will remind you, in Orthodox Buddhism, that is directly and expressly forbidden. You are never to do that. in Orthodox Buddhism. You don't get to watch the movies, you don't get to watch Netflix, you do not get to sing, and you sure do not get to dance.